What's the best litter for ferrets? Well, if that's your question, you're in the right place. We've got a variety of the best-selling cat litters out there, and we're going to put them through their paces with our large group of ferrets. So let's get started. Perhaps the most widely used cat litter on the market is one made out of clay granules. It's been the primary form of cat litter for decades, and it is relatively easy to find, relatively easy to produce, and relatively low cost. But the main issue with clay is with the dust. Clay breaks down into exceptionally fine particles, some of which gets airborne and remains floating for quite some time. As you'd expect, it's not good for any animal to breathe that sort of dust. You can get low dust versions of clay litter, but they're not dust-free, they are just slightly lower dust than you would have in a standard version. Ferrets spend a lot of their time with their noses to the floor snuffling, and as you'll see later in the video, they do tend to snorkel through litters or any other substrate you give to them, and therefore they are at greater risk of dust inhalation than other animals may be. When inhaled, this dust can accumulate and form a sort of cement-like layer within their airways. Either that or it can remain on the body, in which case that they ingest it when they clean themselves, neither of which is good for a ferret. We therefore don't recommend clay litters of any type for ferrets. Okay, so let's quickly run through the different types of litter we're going to be putting on test in this video. First one comes in the form of wood pellets. This is a non-clumping litter, and these wood pellets are quite sturdy and thick and calls itself dust-free, and it pretty much is the least dustiest product that we have out of all of these litters. These pellets are quite thick and quite hard to break apart, so they're not going to deteriorate, but it does mean they have somewhat sharp edges to them. And this next one here is a recycled paper-based litter. Again, comes in pellet form, is not a clumping litter. It's very lightweight and softer than the wood pellet. These things do have a tendency to break down a lot more into dust particles, but it's not too bad. You can see here, even though there is a little bit dust forming at the bottom, it's not completely disintegrating in my hands. Move on now to the clumping litters. First one we've got is wood-based litters, and we've got two in this tray here because pretty much the same thing. The first one is a key European brand, and then this Okocat here is a bit more of an American favoured brand. They do call themselves dust-free, well 99% dust-free at least, and I guess that refers to what the product looks like when it's straight out of the bag. You can see here well-formed granules, and there are some bits of dust in the bottom, similar with the American brand here. Similar size granules and not hugely dusty, but the thing is, these things can and do break apart with a bit of agitation, you can see. So over time, when the ferrets use them, it will generate a lot of dust. Similar with the American brand, all this. Next one along here, also a clumping litter made by Amazon, but this one says made by plant fibers rather than specifically wood, although wood is also a plant fiber. So I did ask Amazon what the plant fibers were, but unfortunately they were a bit useless and couldn't tell me anything that wasn't already written on the website listing. So we just have to guess, although I have seen other plant fiber products listed with peas and other vegetables as the matter. Again, this breaks down relatively easily into a dusty mess. And these granules, to start with, are a lot smaller than these ones for next along. We've got the corn-based litter, again by Amazon, but no doubts over what this is made from. Granules again, clumping litter, slightly bigger granules than the plant-based one that Amazon sell. Again, these things break down into dust with a bit of agitation. So let's see how that manages in practice when the ferrets use it in real. This next one we've got here is a tofu-based litter. Now it says tofu on the packet, but when you look at the ingredients, there's no mention of soya. It just says it's made out of pea flour and corn flour. So a bit strange, but whatever, it's vegetable-based. Pretty unique in terms of the litter itself. It says it's a clumping litter, but it looks pelleted form. Totally different to anything else we've got before. Has a very sweet smell as well, which I'm not particularly keen on, but these things hold themselves together a bit better than some of the other litters. They do break apart, but they don't break apart straight away into dust like the others. So the final one here we've got, again, quite unique. Look at that. Characteristic dark brown. And no surprises, because it's made from walnuts. Well, it's made from apparently the linings of the shells. Much finer grind on this one. It is meant to be a clumping litter. Looks sort of like coffee granules, I guess. These pieces are much harder than any of the other litters, because as you might expect from a walnut shell, they do break apart still to form a dust. So this is not anything particularly unusual compared to the others in terms of forming dust with agitation. It does market itself as low dust. Yeah, it comes straight out of the packet with a fair amount of dust, or at least small particles, which you don't really get out of the packet as such with the others. But I think this is probably going to hold itself together a bit better than some of the others. So what you see is probably what you're going to have after a week or two of use as well. So, okay, so that's all the litters on test. Let's take them outside, put them in the ferret enclosure, and see how they fare. Okay, we've got side by side here the corn-based one here, the European wood clumping one. Over here, you got the Okocat American clumping one. This crazy tofu-based one here. Outside here on the go, we've got this European wood one again. Down here, we've got the brown walnut one. In here, here's the plant fibre one on the go. On the top here, got the wood pellets. Outside, got more of them wood pellets. Good for outdoors. More of the wood clumping, and then finally, you got those paper pellets down there. So let's see how they all fare. Okay, so let's check out this. We got the wood clumping one there. Now let's check how effective this clumping is. Scooping, whether it creates that much dust. See, forms good clumps, easy enough to take out. The granules remain intact, filter through. It's relatively easy to scoop. You see, it's still, after day one, retained a good bit of its composition. It's still not really much dust there, so that's good. Okay, so I'm not expecting this to be much different than the other wood clumping one. I think if anything, the granules in this one are smaller, and so they do filter through. They tend to be sort of granules rather than the other one was a bit more like flakes. Look at that, see? Good clumping, works well. Okay, so again, as with the other wood, it's holding its structure fairly well. You can sort of see there's not huge amounts of dust at the bottom, not like the corn ones generating. It's starting to break apart a little bit, but nothing that I would consider too bad in terms of dust at the moment. Let's bring this corn one over. Check this out. Again, the filtering out of this corn stuff is much easier than the wood, but it's not the be all and end all. The clumping is probably a bit more precise than bit more sturdy than the wood. I mean, it forms pretty hard lumps. They're easy to filter out. Don't fall about when you're mixing around trying to find it. It's still in relatively good condition, this, as you'd hope, after 2 days. Some deterioration at the bottom. Sort of see it breaking down, but majority on the top is still pretty good. So happy enough with that. Okay, so let's look at the tofu one. Quite interested to see how this one works, actually. Yeah. Okay, so it does clump, just about. But you see how much effort needing to filter out these little sticks compared to any, the wood and the corn one. It's not as easy. It's just going to take you a bit longer than it would do with the others to go through all this every day. As a litter, it's doing what it's meant to do in terms of a clumping litter. So, yeah, see, it does work. Again, there's no dust at all on these. It's pretty good. It's got to the bottom there. You have relatively high confidence that you've got everything out of this. I mean, there's these tiny bits here, but it looks, it looks pretty clean, and so low waste from this. All this moving around, he's kicking up this sweet tofu smell, which I'm not totally a fan of, and if you've got other animals around, like cats or dogs, they're probably gonna have a go at that. But luckily, ferrets are not interested. They're sniffing it, but they don't want to eat it. Okay, so let's check out this recycled paper version. Now, this is not clumping, so we know it's not going to form a nice, neat grouping, clumps of it to get out. So, I mean, this is what I don't like about non-clumping litters. You don't know what you're aiming for, really. I mean, you end up either not getting as much as you should, or you end up just throwing away huge amounts of clean litter, and it's quite wasteful. There's bits around there and bits there. Try and dig them out, but awful lot of waste in there, I think. In terms of dust, it's made its way through the first day. Not too much dust, nor barely any more than it was from the packet in there. I know there are bits that I've left in there, you can see darker bits, but what are you going to do? You're going to sit there all day picking one tiny bit out at a time? I don't think so. This is what I have to deal with. Out the poo bin. Oi. No, it's not funny. It's not funny. You see this every day, and it's just your own mess. Why do you get that interested in it? Right. Okay, so we've got the wood pellet litter here, and this one is slightly different to the others in the way that you clean it out. I mean, you start just by getting rid of the matous. Effectively, what's happened is that when water touches these solid pellets, they just disintegrate into dust. So it's sort of the very opposite of clumping in a way. And there are a couple of ways in which you can get this. You can try and scoop up the general area, then filter that dust into the bin. And then in theory, what you're left with is just clean nuggets at the end. So you put those back in. You're never going to get all these tiny bits down the bottom. Yeah, it's going to fall out the bottom. So you can clean out the majority of it, but you're going to be left with what looks like clean sawdust, but it is soaked in urine and then dried, so it's not ideal to be left there. There is another alternative in that you can have a dedicated litter pan which does this for you. So if just bring this one over here. Okay, so now we've got this two-part sieve here. Let's just, in the same way, you still need to get rid of the number twos. Then, for all the bits that have disintegrated into dust, like these bits down here, you don't use a scoop, but you lift it up, because it's filtered. You give it a shake. So in theory, all that dust falls through into the bottom. And you can just empty that into the bin over there. And then ferrets don't get in the way. What you're left with is the clean litter here with no disintegrated sawdust in the bottom. Now, it's not all great news with this litter, because what you get these half-soaked pellets which haven't yet disintegrated, and they obviously won't filter through. There and there, there. You can sort of see them, which means it's not as clean and hygienic as a clumping litter where you've pretty much got everything dirty out and what's left is a clean litter. Yes, trying to record a video here. Yeah, thank you. Okay, let's move on. So here we've got the walnut one. Again, this is going to be another interesting one because it's brand new. Never used this one before. Let's just take the hood off so we can see the thing better. What have we got here, Boggis? Did you do that? Well done. Okay, so this is a clumping one. Because it does work. Again, it does work well. Clumps there. This is by far, in a way, the easiest to filter out. I mean, see how easy that stuff races through the scoop. Well, it's satisfying in a way. Because it's so small, the granules, it's quite easy to pick up every tiny little bit. So you can sort of be comfortable that you've left just litter and no dirt. I mean, that looks fresh and clean, doesn't it? Okay, so it'll be interesting to see how that one fares over the course of the week. Looking down, there's not much dust, so it's holding its integrity after the first day. So, good. Pleased with that one. This one here is the mysterious plant-based litter. So, let's bring that down and have a look. Yeah, good, isn't it? Good, isn't it, Bog? Highly clumping, as you'd expect, because it is a clumping litter. So it's doing its job. But, it's not. You see how much I've taken out that bit. There's lots of tiny little yellow lumps. So it is clumping, but not enough. The clumps are not as solid. So you can see them breaking down. So with a scoop with larger slots like this one, they fall through, so you miss a lot. So what we have instead, I'm going to use one of our other ones with a graded feature so that you should be able to filter some of those. There you go, see. So the solution to that one is not a problem, you just need the right tool. So let's see how it goes. So this was always at smaller granules than some of the others. And there is some degradation down into dust by day 2. Not a huge amount. You can certainly see elsewhere it's not completely dusty. Okay, so it's been about 2 weeks since we put all these various litters around the enclosures. And so we're just going to have a quick run through and see how they've held themselves together, whether the structure is held together or whether they've fallen apart and created a lot of dust at the bottom of the litter trays. So let's just get to that. Okay, let's start again with the European litter first, as usual. As with all of these litters, I've added a lot more over the couple of weeks, and so it's not just the original stuff that was there at the start, but ultimately we're just looking to see what it's like at the bottom and the structure. So you can see this one's held itself up pretty well. I mean, any dust that's going to have appeared over the 2 weeks will still be there because it's not stuff it can easily clean out at the bottom, and it's done well. The corn one, however, you can see there's way more dust. This dust breaks down much easier into its sort of flour constituent than the wood does. This one again is the wood clumping, but it's the American Okocat version. This one's more heavily used, so there's a bit more dust, but not for the amount of use it's had, not a huge amount. And it's not dust which flies up. It's not sort of airborne, so it's not a huge problem. Certainly nowhere near as bad as the corn. Okay, the tofu one again. This one holds itself together very well. A little bit of dust in the bottom because these things do break down, and you can tell now that their little strands are much smaller as they've broken apart over time. But this is one of the better ones for dust, actually, I guess. Here we've got the paper one. Integrity wise, it's done pretty well. I was expecting this one to break apart. All these paper bits, I was expecting those to break down into paper dust pretty easy, but they don't seem to. Okay, so let's look at these wood pellet ones again. Again, it's good at getting rid of the dust. This stuff maintains its integrity in terms of it's not going to be dusty. Okay, so we got the walnut one here. In terms of its integrity, as I thought, it comes out of the packet relatively small bits which are bordering on dust, but it just doesn't break down. What you get out of the packet is what you're left with even after 2 weeks. They do break down. You can sort of see a bit like the corn. These plant granules, they've broken down into dust over time, which worsens the clumping. Just not as good as some of the others. Okay, so let's summarise how each of these litters have performed in 4 key areas. Firstly, the cleanliness, as in how easy it is to fully remove all the soiled litter, and the confidence that the remaining product is clean. Secondly, how dusty the product is in its original form, as well as how easy it breaks down and degrades into dust over time. Thirdly, the longevity, or how long the product lasts before it needs to be replaced. And lastly, the cost of the product, how expensive or cheap it is. When considering cleanliness, the walnut litter is the clear winner in this category. It has fine granules and efficient clumping mechanism, which means that the filtering out of soiled material is quick and easy, and it leaves you with a high confidence that the remaining litter is clean. Walnut is closely followed by corn, wood and tofu litters. There's not much in these, and each have effective clumping abilities, but the larger granules mean that it's easier for soiled litter to remain in the litter. The plant-based product is the poorest performing of the clumping litters, and its clumps do not remain intact as easily, meaning that there can be many soiled particles remaining in the litter after sifting. In last place, we have the pellet litters. The wood pellets have very easy and efficient filtering of the disintegrated pellets, so long as you have the sieve litter tray, but there remains so many soiled pellets which didn't disintegrate that it's impossible to ensure a completely clean tray. It's a similar story for the paper pellets, in that the soiled pellets just seem to disperse around the litter, meaning that it's very difficult to fully remove the soiled litter each day. Then they will dry out, and you have no way of knowing how clean the remaining pellets are. For the dustiness category, this is an area where the wood pellets excel. There's simply no dust, and that created from the soiled pellets sinks and is removed easily. The paper pellets and the tofu litters are next, with very minimal dust either in original form or after 2 weeks of use. We then have the wood and walnut litters. The wood litter has relatively low initial dust, but does seem to disintegrate over time to some extent. The walnut litter does not seem to disintegrate in the same way, but it does come in its original form with much smaller particles and so a high level of initial dustiness than I'd like. Finally, the plant and corn litters are just behind on account of the fact that they disintegrate the most into dust over time. For longevity, again, the wood pellets do well here. They don't disintegrate unless soiled, so there's in theory much less waste and will last a very long time. The walnut litter seems to retain its original form and look pretty much the same after 2 weeks than it did at the start. The tofu and wood litters come next, as they do break down over time, meaning that the remaining unused litter will need replacing slightly sooner than the wood pellet or walnut products. Corn litter deteriorates faster than the tofu or wood. Not only that, but in the right conditions, corn has a tendency to go mouldy, which is not good. Plant litter deteriorated the worst, and so has the lowest score here. Paper litter hasn't been placed last due to deterioration, but rather you end up scooping and binning so much of the clean litter that you go through the litter at much faster rate than any of the others, so the bag will not last anywhere near as long. Different litters have very different weights, but whatever the weight, we will still fill the same volume of space in a litter tray. Therefore, we consider the cost of the litter in terms of the price per litre. Wood pellets are by far the cheapest product, perhaps half the price of the nearest alternative. Indeed, a further trick here is not to buy wood pellets marketed as cat litter, but instead buy wood pellets marketed as equine products. These will obviously come in much larger packages, as horses use much larger volumes, but they are the same product, but much cheaper still. The cheapest of the clumping litters was Amazon's corn litter, coming in around 20 to 25% cheaper than the others. All the other products were then very similar in price. For people with outdoor ferrets, the weather and outdoor pests can be a consideration. Plant food products are far more likely to attract pests, such as mice, which nip in and feed on the litter. Also, plant food products, if left for long periods in the right conditions, can grow mould, as all food products do. The key concern of corn-based litters being that corn can host a particularly nasty form of microscopic fungus. This fungus produces a toxin called aflatoxin. This toxin can be very serious, and deadly outbreaks have been known to occur in corn-based food products. Fungus is more prevalent in hotter countries than it is in more temperate locations. The European Union and the UK have much stricter controls in place regarding the maximum permitted level of toxins in corn products than the US. All products are tested and must be destroyed if they breach these limits. Whilst the toxin is of course far more of a risk within pet foods, there can be a secondary risk for litter when a ferret ingests some of the products due to cleaning themselves. Each pet owner will have their own tolerance for risk, but it is noted that none of these litters are entirely risk-free. For these reasons of pests and mould, we tend to stick to wood products in our outdoor areas of our enclosures. As we've discussed, each of these litters have their own pros and cons. Different people will place different emphasis on each of those pros and cons, meaning that we can't arrive at a conclusive winner or loser to which everyone will agree. However, for me, whilst the wood pellets have some very compelling pros, and indeed it's a great price, it's hard to look past the fact that it's not possible to maintain a completely clean litter tray. There's just so many soiled pellets which don't disintegrate. The paper pellets were an easy no for me, as the soiled litter removal was so inaccurate. It led to very high waste. The plant litter didn't excel in any category, and so was another easy exclusion. The tofu litter scored well, but the practicality of the greater effort it takes to filter those long strands through the scoops puts me off. This is a personal choice, and it has a lot going for it otherwise. That said, I'm not sure of the sustainability of this product. All the other litters are made from waste byproducts, whereas the tofu litters seem to be manufactured from edible food items. This seems to be a waste of resources to grow a food product explicitly for the purpose of being used as a litter. The corn and wood clumping litters are very similar, and both are products I currently use. The corn is beaten by the clumping wood litter, but it is cheaper. I have continued with corn to date on the basis of price, but I'm still not sure whether the additional function of the wood litters are enough to pay 20% more for, though it's a bit of a personal choice here. Finally, the walnut litter is a strong contender for a winner here. I'm certainly going to buy more of this product and possibly look at some other brands to see whether I can improve on the dust content and the price. Thanks for watching. If you did like the video, please like and subscribe, and try out some of our other videos.